Welcome back for part 3 on marketing and competitive advantage. Let's get back to it. Let's channel Randall as coach. Randall, you're famed for saying, all the leaders you work with are very sharp and sometimes they get stuck. And if they only knew the right questions, they could come up with the right answers. So talk to me about what those prompts should be for when someone's rethinking their marketing. Is there where would you start?
So part of it, I would start precisely on the question of competitive advantage. How do you differentiate the organization? Because if you're marketing something that is no different than anyone else, the question is how do you compete? You typically compete on, call it price. Okay, some organizations that's their go-to-market, but it's certainly not sustainable. It brings to mind one of our marketing frameworks. Price, expertise, trust. Every organization in those three sort of corners is somewhere, right? Either they compete on price/value, right? We're the cheapest, or we're the smartest. Expertise, right? We can solve this specific problem, okay? Or they compete with trust, which is I'm the trusted advisor. No matter what I say, that I've got your interests at heart, and I won't lead you astray. And so everybody's somewhere within that sort of those three particular corners. So I think part of it is okay, defining what a particular organization sort of current and desired placement in that space actually is, figuring out what it is that differentiates them, and then asking some questions with respect to, well, let's just see, how are you exposing that? Back, Rania, to your question about preference earlier in the podcast. So how do we get people to refer us based on it? For trial, how do we make sure that people can test drive that particular differentiator, right? And so on. So I think those are, that's part of the place of where I start. But every single leader that I've had as a coaching client has got their own huge amount of experience, but also their own blind spots. Somebody's come up through the financial ranks. They might not know as much about, say, technology or marketing or business development. Somebody comes up through the marketing ranks into that leadership. While they might not know as much about finance, for example, or accounting or internal controls or whatever it happens to be, right? Or, for example, a particularly growing organization, they now have an advisory board. They now have an official board of directors. They might not know, for example, how to interact. Or they're now hiring the next tier of management, and their job as leaders suddenly is different. They might not have done that before, right? So asking the questions, okay, sometimes for me is, okay, what's the nature of change in the organization, certainly in the last year or so, and really in the next year or two, where might we be able to take it? What are the blockers in terms of the knowledge base, okay, of the particular leader, number one. And number two, I'd also say it's not just the questions that I might ask that, and by the way, suggested solutions as well. But it's also the question of what they don't know, right? It's not just, here's some questions, by the way, here's a big list of my 100 questions. Right. And we've got a white paper on quite a few of these questions, right? But it's the specific questions for the particular organization and the particular place that leader is in.
No discussion can be had without talking about the impact of AI and generative AI. We just mentioned, knowing versus not knowing the right question to ask. So I'll ask a question on AI. Maybe it's the wrong question. You can push me in the right direction, Randall. You have a tip sheet that made a splash that talks about the junkification of the internet, with people just, making it rain, garbage AI articles to create, links to their site and SEO and all the rest. And, I don't know if the SEO bots have caught up with this, and you've talked about, ideally you would recommend there being a requirement to say that material is generated by AI or no AI was generating it. In all of this talk about creating content, inbound marketing, ideating, creating it, making it unique to your firm, how can we compete? How do we compete with the junkification of the internet?
Man, I don't know. Okay. I really don't
A
know.
humble man, a humble man.
But here's some ideas, okay? Part of it is to say you're gonna put a stick in the sand, a line in the sand, I should say, and so for the stuff that we put out, we say, you're right. This is created by us. This is not, AI generated, etc. Um, but I think the way we can compete using AI is not just a question of saying, let's junkify our stuff and let's just sort of like pound out 1,000 different articles, etc. But we might be able to use it to help generate potential ideas that we might want to write about and our unique sort of perspective on some of those ideas. If you asked AI, what are the typical questions that a client might ask when it comes to such and such, right? And you give it, a much longer prompt so that it gets in the area. All of a sudden, you've got 20 questions. You look at those questions and you say, well, half of these are junk. Forget it. Gee, some of them are interesting ideas, but that doesn't speak to what our business is. And then there's two or three or four ideas that are left where you say, yeah, these are actually great questions. So that might help a little bit, if you're using your mind once you get some of the output. I'll also say that AI can be very helpful with respect to some, process efficiency kind of stuff, whether it be, some of the internal writing or whatever it happens to be. So many people today, and of course AI is getting better, can say, "Oh, I could smell AI a mile away." Excuse me, just in terms of the way it writes. But I think that the idea of saying, hey, listen, if we've got a particular brand voice, we need to make sure that we're true to it. And yes, you can train AI to do a whole bunch of stylistic things, but sometimes your brand changes slightly. And what's the trained AI? There's a bit of a gap. I think the real opportunity for using AI in marketing isn't just in content. I think it's with respect to understanding the huge data, and we've been talking about big data for like a decade or so right now. But how do you use AI to understand the patterns in your bigger data? Right? You've got, decades of client data. You've got, tons of internal data, right? There's external data that you could purchase, etc. And is it possible to use AI and machine learning as a way to understand and gain new insights in your business, or to identify trends or issues that might not be latent to a typical analyst or to your management team? I think that's one way that we can use it from a marketing perspective. I also think there's something else. And once again, we're into this sustainable competitive, advantage discussion, which is maybe it can be used in a disruptive or transformational exercise to change what the organization is doing or how it does it, right? Um, Here's a particular example. Accounting firms do audits. The way audits work, and my apologies to all of my accounting firm clients and any accountants listening, auditors listening here, but it's basically statistical sampling. You take based on a particular, number of transactions, you decide what percentage of them you're going to test to make sure that in fact those transactions are reflected in the books properly, right? So what percentage? Well, is it possible that perhaps you can use AI to do a much better job and vastly change the equation so the sampling is decided and actually tested by AI in a way that individuals, it just is not possible. What if, for example, you can use it as a consultant to short circuit in a vast way a lot of the analytical work that typically you would use human brain cells for, right? What if, for example, if you're in the drug discovery world, rather than doing very slow experimentation, you could model what's happening with synthetic data and discover a whole bunch of new, vaccines or proteins or antibiotics or whatever it is, vastly changing the actual way, say, drug discoveries worked over the last 100 years, which is effectively trial and error, right? So the question of AI in marketing is really the question of how might it actually give a competitive advantage by changing, disrupting, transforming actually how the organization works, not just speeding up or improvement in the ideation. Okay. And I think that's very, very exciting. And unfortunately, for some businesses, it means, uh-oh, if we can see this, we might be effectively disintermediated. For example, an ad agency that does lots and lots and lots of writing, um, I'm sure there are lots of clients who are saying, why are we paying this agency to do all this writing? Surely we can use ChatGPT to do it all. And the agencies will have some good answers as to why, no, you shouldn't do that. Okay, but the clients are thinking about it. So what would you do, say, as an agency owner to say, well, how do we compete against that? Well, the answer is you don't compete against it. You sort of adopt in a way so that the client understands that what they're getting isn't just quote writing, but an awful lot more and different. So a rambling answer, Rania, but it's a big question, AI. And AI in marketing is exciting, but it's also scary. It's also scary for a lot of people who are traditionalists, let's just say.
Don't cut yourself short. No rambling. It's all good food for thought. I'll ask one more question, then I'll give you the final word. The topic of the hour has been marketing and competitive advantage. And I've heard you, you know, in the different threads in the past hour, you've talked about, the importance of IP that's unique to the brand, such as frameworks, processes, how you do business. But we're talking about marketing, and help me understand, Randall. To my mind, that like internal delivery stuff isn't like part of marketing. That's part of delivery. And for firms that are not doing marketing, like we talked about, the ones that don't have social and don't have thought leadership and don't do speaking, though they have robust internal processes, but it's not marketing. Like in your mind, they're connected.
Oh man, this is a very, very big, very, very, very big question. Let me just put some bullets around that, and if you want, we can explore them. One sort of world of marketing is, you know what? Marketing is tied hugely to product and service development. Another sort of thread of marketing is you've got to be strong on the inside in order to be strong on the outside, i.e., have a strong internal culture equals external branding, etc. Another thread on that one is really more about um, the people. Gee, the brand is connect and the business development is connected through people. So what are we doing investing in training with these people? How are we training them to be more innovative, for example, to embed that into what their individual capabilities are? Or same thing with respect to different ways of training them for business development, like different approaches, new approaches, etc. So there's that people training kind of aspect to it. Another is with respect to, okay, it's not just content for the perspective of outreach, say awareness and preference, but it's also a question of content as a competitive differentiator, right? And how that fits into defining the brand because it's something tangible, right? I think that there's a whole bunch of different angles, and if we look at it, sometimes things absolutely might be more focused on say the delivery side, right? But on the other hand, anybody who's a delivery agent, an analyst, an advisor, okay, even the receptionist at the lobby, okay, if somebody comes in, um, it's always that last mile. It's the person that actually embodies the brand and is making true what the marketing promise actually is. Right. And so if it's not true, or if there's some divergence with respect to the expectations that marketing sets up, okay, it completely falls flat. It's a complete and utter waste of investment. Right. So yeah, there is a lot going on there.
You talked about corporate brands and the need to be strong on the inside and having that healthy internal culture, which creates, an attractive, admirable, pleasant, place for clients to be proud to work with and enjoy working with them. But you work with and ran agencies, firms, service-based businesses, which require a lot of people and complexity. And with complexity comes chaos and fluctuations and unpredictability and lots of, staff, which has lots of big personalities that creates friction and emotion. What does that mean to be strong on the inside when the reality is we do see a lot of chaos and emotion on the inside?
I think part of this, so I think that organizations where everybody is an automaton who is an emotionless kind of drone, if you will. I don't think anybody would aspire to building a company like that. On the other hand, having utter and crazy chaos is very stressful and is not the only path to creativity and innovation, right? I think that we could harness the individuality of people, right, and guide the organization if we only invest a little bit more in the people. And this is what I mean by that. How often, for example, does an organization have leadership retreats that are actually useful, right? And that align the top level? How often do we, for example, have standard training to move people from, say, strong individual contributors to first-time managers, right? How often do we build culture, not through, say, the Christmas party or the summer social or whatever, although those are important, okay? But in terms of teaching people how to collaborate and how to communicate with each other, right? How often do we do things at a departmental or divisional level that sort of align, whether it's kickoffs or things. And yeah, I know there's quarterly sales kickoffs, but how about everybody else? How do we make sure, for example, that the right people are recruited, right? And the process that you have in there, and not having it like just um, given to the HR people and gee, we've got a favorite recruiter, but how do we make sure that the culture of the people coming in are the ones that that will thrive, right? And so how often do we look at all of these different things? And I think that when we, particularly in growing businesses, or there's a lot of complex industry change, okay, we forget about all these things that we can do. What are we doing to drip constant learning into the organization, right? So everyone's got the common vocabulary, right? So no surprise, there's chaos. No surprise. Yeah, there's, we get stuff done. We're clients focused. Yeah, we sort of do whatever it takes, right? But we can have that and also a little less chaos too. If only we kind of learned a little bit how to function as a team, how to be a little bit more collaborative, how to embody whatever the particular brand is. So everybody's got a much stronger sense of alignment. We don't want drones. What we want is people who we can get the best out of, and so they can contribute to the overall brand whole on the inside, right? And hopefully that will make it a lot easier when people are dealing with the organization, whether it's in the marketing and business development side, externally, or whether it's on the delivery side externally. So that was a great question. Thank you.
Another one of the, brand culture, marketing approaches a company can use to, present their company brand. You talked about, we are the R&D experts, we're the innovators, right? But, how many times can a company or entrepreneurial leader strike gold in your own career? You have, foundational frameworks that you've used for decades to inspire, countless organizations. And you still always continue to invest in your own professional development, but do you find you're still coming up with those foundational frameworks? Like, isn't it you're
There's some
still
old.
seeing innovation?
I think so. I think so. Okay, certainly for me, um, the jet fuel is working with all these different organizations and seeing kind of and learning from sort of what they're doing. I may be teaching them, but they might also be teaching me. I learn a little bit about a new industry, a little bit about a new, a new particular corporate, or a service company, etc. And everyone's different. Every organization is different. The people within it are different. Their histories are different. Their futures are different, etc. And because of that, when there's particular challenges, yeah, absolutely. I've come up with all kinds of additional new stuff over the years that is helped. And sometimes I think, oh, gee, I should have thought of this years ago. But no, okay. And the other thing is that we can borrow other things as well. There's all kinds of, we don't need to reinvent the wheel for everything, and we can use them. So you and I were sort of chuckling, about how many books per week we actually read in different things. Lately it's been on, hybrid work and collaboration and synchronous and asynchronous, right? So gee, all of a sudden we're getting new data that comes from elsewhere. We've got to be learning too. So with respect to a lot of these frameworks that we actually have, okay, price, expertise, trust. Okay, we talked about in this podcast the trust curve. We actually talked about this one as well, right? But there's other ones, for example, that I think that marketers really should be using. And we kind of know the words. Journey mapping, right? We didn't come up with journey mapping. It's been around forever. But we actually have a whole bunch of very specific questions that should be asked at each touch point. Well, that's our sort of overlay onto that general topic, right? And I think that if any marketer is thinking, okay, how do we sort of up our game? Obviously, look at that sustainable competitive advantage question that we talked about at the beginning of part one of the podcast, right? But it's also the question of saying, well, okay, so if we were to do journey mapping, can we do this in a different way? If, for example, we were going to look at personas, might we look at them in a different way? If we're going to be doing, I don't know, any of these other marketing things, might we look at it in a different way? And the only way you could look at it in a different way is if you bring outside brain cells into the mix to teach you what that new way is, or to help you through it. You could do the work, okay? You don't need to sort of give it to a consultant or anything, but I think bringing that external knowledge in, okay, is a way to make sure that your organization remains innovative and also fresh in terms of the marketing. You know your business better than anybody on the outside. But on the other side, it could very well be that the seeds and the ideas and the processes the outside brings in are exactly that point that can just turn the corner on whatever marketing that you're actually doing.
Randall, I'll give you the last word. What would you like to leave everybody with?
We're talking about sustainable competitive advantage. We're talking about marketing, etc. We've talked a little bit about implementation, but underlying a lot of this is really people, right? And if we're the question is, how do we make sure that all the people are sort of up to speed? So whatever the particular role, internally focused or externally focused, that they know what their part is in marketing, and that they've got that common vocabulary, that they are sort of attuned to what they need to know and contributing to what other people need to know, that they're enabled, they're empowered, right? Not just using the words, but actually tooled up to be able to do this, so that truly the organization, I hate to say, is a marketing organization, but really it's an organization that uniquely knows how to solve their clients' and prospects' problems better than anyone else. And everybody inside knows it and knows how to do it and knows what their role is. So even though we've been talking about all these other things, I think it really boils down to, what are we doing with the people? Because that's the way we're going to move the needle, rather than implementing many programs, because it's the people that are at the core of it.
On that note, thank you, Randall, for the conversation, and thank you to everyone who's listening in. If any of the issues we talked about resonate with you, if you're considering a change and would like our perspective, please reach out. We'd be happy to learn about your organization and share some resources. If you'd like to get invites to these monthly events, do email us at info@randallcraig.com and follow us on LinkedIn, and we'll follow you.